Hey everyone, we decided to release this episode since we had only released this one for our Patreon exclusive members a few months back, and we just feel like it's a very important and it was a really good episode that we just wanted to share with all of you and with really important information as well. So, hope you guys like it and enjoy the episode.
Flint, Michigan.
Damn, you just went straight to it.
It's such a big topic.
It is.
Especially
It
in
is.
pediatrics.
Yeah.
I don't know about adults. I'm sure that it was a really big topic for everyone when it first happened.
Oh, we'll get into it.
But
yeah.
it was a huge talking point for us because
Yeah.
it really established lead screening for kids at risk populations and what can happen if
Yeah.
you really aren't paying
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah. Welcome, Patreon, patrons, however you decide to call yourself.
She also calls you patronuses.
Patronuses. I love that. I got that from Morbid when they used to have Patreon. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, welcome back. We're obviously going to be talking about Flint, Michigan.
Yes.
You had brought up this idea, and I'm like, man, this is going to be a monster of an episode to like try to reduce. So I tried my best to do that because I don't really like doing two-parters unless we absolutely necessarily really need to, especially for Patreon. But if you want to hear more about something that we touch upon, let us know and we'll do it in some form, some way, somehow. We'll do it because you guys are our patrons and we love you guys that much.
Yes.
And so much. Anyway, so let's start it off. I guess I'll start because I always do history, right?
You always do this spring.
All right. So the background on Flint, Michigan, right? It had been sourcing its water from the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department for decades. But however, in 2011, Flint's financial troubles worsened to the point that state of Michigan assigned an emergency manager to oversee city operations and budget decisions. In an attempt to cut costs, city officials decided to switch from the Detroit water supply to a new pipeline from Lake Huron, and that's northeast of Flint because I was like, where the hell is that? I didn't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that kind of gives you like some idea if you want, if you're like me. Anyway, so which would take 3 years to complete, right? As an interim measure, the city turned to Flint River, a local source known for being highly corrosive. And
Yes.
yeah, great. All of this kind of started pretty much for the sake of saving money.
Yep.
What are you?
And then we'll talk about how that resulted.
Exactly. But then once I read that, I'm like, corrosive. Is it really what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
It is.
It is.
So when we say the Flint River water was more corrosive, it means that the river water had chemical properties that made it more likely to cause damage to metal surfaces it came in contact with. This is like the pipes, okay, in Flint's water system that gets it from the water source to your house. Specifically, corrosive water has characteristics such as high acidity, mineral content, and other reactive elements that increase its tendency to dissolve metals like lead from pipes and plumbing materials into the water supply.
Yeah.
So, big problem.
Yeah.
Big. So a little synopsis of how that works, because they're like, just a little bit of like how that actually works and why this became such a big problem. The pH level of water measures its acidity, right? So the corrosive water often has a lower pH, meaning that it's more acidic.
Yeah.
Which can break down chemicals more easily. In Flint, the river water was more acidic compared to that of the Detroit supplied water, so increasing the risk of leaching metals from the pipes into the water. Flint River had high levels of chloride, a component of salt, which can be corrosive. The chloride, what you put it in pools and whatnot, right? But this is like in high levels, right? So chlorides can create a reaction with metals in pipes, accelerating corrosion of these pipes. Additionally, certain minerals can either promote or inhibit corrosion depending on their composition. And in this case, for chlorine, it promoted it. The lack of anti-corrosion treatment, that's another one. So normally water utilities treat corrosive water with chemicals like phosphates to coat the pipes and prevent metal from leaching. However, Flint didn't apply this treatment to its river water, so the corrosive elements in the water had direct access to the lead in Flint's aging pipes. Flint had many old lead pipes in its water system. When the untreated corrosive water flowed through these pipes, it dissolved lead particles, which contaminated the drinking water. This lead contamination posed a significant health risk, particularly to children. Yeah. So when did that switch happen? It happened in April 2014 when it was officially switched over to the Flint River. However, in what may seem like a glaring oversight for city officials, the residents pretty much almost immediately noticed the changes. The water was discolored. It smelled bad. It tasted strange. Can you imagine?
No. No, I cannot.
No.
Because I would be the first person calling Miami-Dade sewer.
But then again, it's the government. So it's like how, like, anyway. And then the corrosive nature of the river water caused lead to leach from the city's old pipes into the drinking water supply. So that's what you're drinking, what you're bathing with, what you're doing everything with, right? Despite early concerns raised by residents, like she had said, like you'd be immediately calling, you'd be like trying to figure out what the hell, why is my
drinking water yellow?
Disgusting, you know? Despite the early concerns raised by them and some city officials, the city and state initially reassured the public that the water was safe.
What's disgusting?
It wasn't until the pediatrician Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha revealed a significant rise in elevated blood lead levels among Flint's children in 2015 that the issue could no longer be ignored. Her research showed the direct link between the switch in the water supply and lead poisoning in the communities most vulnerable.
Yeah. So thank God.
Yeah.
Had it not been for her, then this just would have continued.
Kept on. Because
just worsened.
City officials were like, no, this is fine. It's safe. Like,
yes.
gaslighting.
I would like, and I would like to know what tests were done that
Seemingly none.
considered you saying that it was safe.
I don't think they did any. They were just...
And what is your definition of safe as well?
That too.
You know?
That too.
So, okay, so why it happened, all right? Why did all of this happen with the water system and them not coating, not treating the water with the phosphates? So financial pressures and honestly mismanagement. Yeah. So Flint was a city under financial stress and its officials were working under emergency management appointed by the state, okay? It obviously limited local control. The decision to switch from Flint River as an interim source seemed cost effective, but proved disastrously short-sighted. Yeah. Officials not only underestimated the river water's corrosiveness, but also failed to apply federal recommended anti-corrosion treatments due to budgetary constraints. You put so many people's health at risk for money because you wanted to save money.
And we're talking about water.
We're
not talking about something that people could live without, you know?
Water.
Literally
everyone's
the
drinking
most
water.
Basic need.
Yes.
You know?
Yep. So there was multiple failures at the regulatory level. State, federal, environmental agencies failed to provide oversight, and Flint's water system was not adequately monitored. So the Safe Drinking Water Act mandated corrosion control, yet officials waived this requirement due to cost considerations. The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, had authority to intervene but delayed action as the situation deteriorated.
Jesus Christ.
So usually there are environmental engineers, right? And a lot of professions that go out and their job is to go to water sources, pick up samples, run tests, make sure that everything is under control. Yeah. And a lot of this didn't happen. No. Right? All because we had to kind of bypass that because we're trying to save money, so let's not do that.
Again, for the most basic need.
So Flint is a predominantly low-income and African-American community, which has raised questions about whether socioeconomic and demographic factors influence the delayed response to the crisis. Flint residents often encountered slower responsive, dismissive attitudes and lack of urgency from officials, pointing to broader issues on how environmental concerns are addressed in under-resourced communities. And honestly, I think it's a sad truth, but that happens time and time again.
Yeah. I mean, you even see it in big cities like here.
Yeah.
You know, the differences in municipalities.
Exactly. Low income neighborhoods tend to kind of just
go by the wayside a little bit.
Exactly. Easier. Yep.
Yeah.
And also since most of those neighborhoods don't have people to go to, who can I talk to this about?
Right.
Then they're kind of like left up in the air. And also, if someone calls, right, if I call the city and they tell me, hey, no, the water is safe to drink.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how am I supposed to?
I can't imagine you going out there getting like a little pH vial.
Exactly.
And so start testing that.
So
Most people don't even know what
You're
pH
putting,
is.
exactly.
Like,
You're putting your trust in your city.
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
you pay taxes, where you do all those things, where you're a part of the community.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, children are having lead levels like through the roof, right?
oh my God.
Yeah.
I,
So
I don't even know. I don't even know like how I would
imagine
react to
how
that.
upset you would be
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
if your child had high lead levels. And you personally, as a mom, I feel like I would have personally also felt at fault
Like the
because
mom guilt, yeah.
I believed someone else. But what else are they supposed to do?
That's what I'm saying. And we're talking about a lot of people don't know what this is, like what it even is like a corrosive water supply, or anything like that. These are like, this has a lot of science to it and stuff like that, So again, and you need equipment to test water because sometimes, like water could have a different discoloration and stuff like that, but you don't really know what's in it.
Yeah, and no, and in low income families, you also don't have money to just be like, okay, well, that water is yellow, so I'm gonna buy bottled water.
That's the other thing.
So they don't have that luxury to go and buy packs of water because they feel iffy about the water.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, no, like we need water. They told us it was safe. And
Yeah, what else are you going to do?
what else are you going to do?
Right.
Exactly. So why was it such a big problem? Let's talk first about health risks and lead exposure. Lead is toxic, particularly to children, pregnant women, and immunocompromised individuals. Even at low levels, it can cause irreversible harm.
Irreversible.
Yes, irreversible. Let's focus first on children. So lead exposure is linked to cognitive impairments, okay, developmental delays, all right, behavioral issues, reduced attention span, and lower IQ. It can damage the brain and nervous system, and it can also honestly lead to lifelong learning and behavioral problems, okay? So I can imagine these parents like, oh my God, like what's going on? And being very confused at their kid's behavior and probably go to a doctor, a medical provider, and then be like, oh, I mean, it's just your kid.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then in
Kind of
adults,
one of the last things you would think of is the water supply.
the water supply, yeah. So, and in adults, the lead exposure increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney damage, and fertility issues. For pregnant women, it can cause miscarriages, stillbirths, premature births, and it crosses the placenta to affect the baby, the fetus. Now we're going to talk a little bit about something else that happened. It was an outbreak
tied into this water supply problem.
Yeah, it's an outbreak on something called Legionnaires disease, which is a really, really bad respiratory system infection. So the Legionnaires disease outbreak in Flint was a severe consequence of the water's contamination crisis, highlighted the additional health risks that emerged from the city's untreated water system. So let's do a little bit of just like a medical talk on Legionnaires. So Legionnaires disease is a type of pneumonia caused by Legionella. It's a bacteria and it thrives in warm, stagnant water environments, especially when the water treatment is inadequate. Okay, so we just talked about complications with lead. Now we're talking about Legionella, a bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, because the water
Treated.
was not being treated for anything, for
Yes.
minerals like lead and all that, chemicals,
Yeah.
and also bacteria.
Yep.
All those things.
So it's typically contracted like the actual like
How you get it.
Legionella, okay, is contracted by inhaling small water droplets that contain the bacteria. That can be, those that are dispersed by air in conditioning systems, which that's how we usually learn it, like old ACs that are leaking and you have constant exposure. Showers, fountains, the disease can affect anyone. It poses a really great risk to older adults, smokers, and individuals with really weak immune system. It's a really bad pneumonia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How the outbreak unfolded in Flint, when Flint switched the water supply to the Flint River without adequate treatment, the water system became really vulnerable to microbial growth, including Legionella. So the untreated Flint River water allowed bacteria to just proliferate, okay, just breed, all right, in Flint's water system, creating ideal conditions for an outbreak, okay? So between June 2014 and November 2015, so a little over a year, Genesee?
I guess the Genesee.
Yeah, Genesee County, where Flint is located, saw a substantial increase in Legionnaires disease. So typically the county might see only maybe a handful of cases per year. It's actually not that common.
Right.
But during this period, there were nearly 90 confirmed cases resulting in at least 12 deaths.
All for untreated water supply.
For saving money and for skipping certain protocols.
And I know this came to me as a surprise because Flint, Michigan to me is very much tied to lead, right? To the lead problem that happened, you know, and all that stuff. But it's true. If you have an untreated water source, it's gonna breed out anything, all the nastiness, which is probably why the residents were saying, well, my water tastes and looks nasty and it smells nasty and all that. And you're bathing in it too.
Yeah,
You're drinking it, you're bathing it, you're doing everything.
You're cooking with it. You're doing everything.
Everything.
Yeah. You're washing your fruit with it.
Laundry,
Yeah, everything.
everything.
So why did Legionella thrive in Flint water? So there's a lot of several factors that contributed to the growth of Legionella in Flint water. But again, the untreated water. So Flint River was not treated with appreciated levels of disinfectants such as chlorine, to kill bacteria. Chlorine is a common disinfectant in water systems, but without sufficient levels of it, bacteria like Legionella can grow, survive, and multiply.
Yep.
Aging infrastructure. Flint's aging water infrastructure included old pipes and then with a biofilm level. What is a biofilm? Okay, it's disgusting. It's literally a film, a layer, of microorganisms and organic matter.
It's as gross
So
as it
all
sounds.
living things, right? Just creating a film, on the water,
how I am.
on the pipe walls.
Yeah.
So that provided a great environment where the bacteria could grow. So the corrosive, untreated water exacerbated the degradation of these pipes and then contributing to the bacterial buildup. Then temp variations. Legionella bacteria thrives in warm, stagnant water. So stagnant water is just water that's not continuously moving. So with Flint being untreated, it was kind of like mimicking a stagnant water environment. With its varying temperatures and low chlorine levels, it became a great habitat for breeding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legionella was having the time of its life in those pipelines.
Yeah.
So disgusting. So disgusting. So obviously this brought a massive, massive public health impact, right? And it's kind of pretty much known for that still to this day and probably for the rest of ever. So Legionnaires Outbreak brought severe health consequences such as high mortality rates, right? Legionnaires disease can be deadly, like she had mentioned, to vulnerable populations. And like she said, 12 people died from this disease during this outbreak. Then there were wider spread of respiratory illnesses because the bacteria spread through the water system. Exposure was widespread, and many individuals were likely affected. Those who survived the illness often faced prolonged recovery periods and potential long-term respiratory complications. There was a delay in response and public communication, which was one of the biggest freaking problems that happened with this. So the outbreak of Legionnaires' disease wasn't immediately communicated to the public. There was a significant delay in acknowledging the outbreak, which raised concerns about transparency and accountability. Some officials suggested that more prompt action and public notification could have potentially reduced the impact of the outbreak, but it didn't happen. Now you're thinking, okay, it happened. People found out about it thanks to this pediatrician and all that. So how the hell did they resolve such a big, massive, widespread issue as your whole water supply being compromised? They switched back to the Detroit water. By October 2015, after months of evidence and public pressure, Flint switched back to Detroit's water supply. However, the damage had already been done. The city's pipes were severely corroded by this point because, again, like I had said earlier on, that water was very corrosive. So it just damaged the shit out of all that piping. So it was already old. Then they added more corrosive water into it, and it just made what was already pretty bad worse. And then although the water source was once again safe, residents continued to experience lead exposure because the existing infrastructure was now corroded and problematic and leaking lead. So federal, state, and philanthropic, I can never say that word.
Philanthropic?
Yeah, I have to trip over it and then I'll finally get there. But I can never say it out of the first one. So that's the word of the episode for me today. Anyway, so there was obviously some support for that. So recognizing the depth of the crisis, federal and state governments allocated millions of dollars to address the situation when it was finally acknowledged and addressed. The city of Flint received substantial federal aid to replace old pipes and repair the infrastructure. Nonprofit organizations and activists also stepped in to provide water filters, bottled water, and testing services to residents. They had to completely redo all the pipelines, just the water infrastructure, really, with the help of federal support and with philanthropic. There I go, tripping over. Yeah. Trip, but I was able to get up again anyway. What happened with all of this support and stuff like that? So Flint's pipe replacement was a massive undertaking taking years to complete. By 2021, most of Flint's lead service lines had been replaced, but the process was slow, requiring regular testing to ensure water quality improved. Furthermore, restoring public trust in the safety of water took even longer. Because imagine that, you've been gaslit for something so serious like lead in your water, and then a breeding ground for all sorts of bacteria, which led to Legionnaires, which led to 12 people dying. So
90 people.
Yeah, 90 people got affected by it,
Yeah,
and 12
died.
died.
Yeah.
You know? So, and you were just being gaslit the whole time. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. I don't know what this is, but you're
And
fine.
like also like when I say like 12 people died, that is literally the worst possible case scenario.
Yeah.
No one's talking about how many ICU admissions, how many people suffered sequelae from that and that infection.
Still suffering, and then going back to the lead.
Yes.
All the people suffering from lead, again, it's irreversible damage.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So how are you really going to like trust again after that bad of a fuck up? Because I mean, that was an epic fuck up.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, go ahead with the repercussions,
Yeah.
like we were saying. Like, I mean, I don't.
So now we're kind of a good segue into,
Yeah.
you know, if there's any repercussions that are still lingering. Many of Flint's children who were exposed to lead during these crises continue to face developmental challenges, unfortunately. These children need ongoing educational and psychological support, and it places a strain on the local services and the schools because you had this like whole entire community just suffer the same thing.
Which requires a lot of resources.
Yeah. And then also psychological impact and mistrust in general. I mean, I would be on that boat.
Yeah, I would have moved out, but then again,
Some
not
people
everybody
don't have
can.
that option.
Exactly.
You know,
not everybody
so-
can just pick up and go.
Yeah, people have their jobs there, their livelihoods there, their families there, everything
They
there.
can't just sell a house willy-nilly and like
and just go and
you
start
know.
over.
Exactly. Do you remember in the news, like everybody trying, it was kind of like the COVID days of everybody just like trying to hoard,
Yeah.
and everybody just going crazy, and it was with water,
Water. Yeah.
with the water bottles.
Terrible.
Terrible. And they had to go to different like cities and counties and
yeah,
all
to
that
get
to
in.
find water.
Terrible.
Terrible.
And then the Flint crisis created an enduring sense of fear and mistrust. And then many residents continue to use bottled water even till today because they just don't trust it.
I honestly would.
I would too. And then the psychological impact of the betrayal by the public officials really left a lot of Flint residents just lasting trauma. And again, it's like the morale, like the community morale is just down and the trust is down. So it's imagine living in a place where you cannot trust the community that you live in. You feel stuck. You feel imprisoned there.
Yeah. And honestly, yes, there's always a little bit of, mostly these days, we're not going to talk about politics or anything like that. But, you know, in the recent years, decade, whatever, and ongoing now, regardless of your political view, there is like this lingering mistrust in the government, in like health officials and all that stuff. So like, imagine like how bad that was when it was in your face, like lead.
Yep.
You know?
And then you also have like the legal aspect of it. So in 2021, the state of Michigan reached a settlement of over 600 million to compensate Flint residents. Still not enough, right?
Nope.
Because these kids, right, these people are still having this ongoing trauma, developmental delays, behavioral issues. The settlement is among the largest for a civil case in Michigan's history. However, again, like what we said, the residents argue that no amount of money can fully compensate for the harm that they endured. It's like what's done is done, right? It's like, great, thank you for your money. But where was this money?
Yeah.
so that all of this wouldn't have happened
Yeah,
in the
'cause
first place.
it was such tight budgetary constraints that
So
you
this
had
is what
to
you had to do. This is what had to happen. People's lives had to be, you know,
completely changed for the
completely
worse.
changed for the worse and at risk in order for you to save money. And then at the end of the day, give us this money, but the damage is already done, my friend.
And there's no going back to it. Again, irreversible. Like, it's just the most horrific word when it comes to a problem in medicine, I think. When you say the word irreversible damage, that is just kind of like almost worse, one of the worst case scenarios you
Yeah.
could
And
say.
I'm sorry, but the people in charge there are the ones that need to take that responsibility and they
100%.
should be in jail.
Oh, 100%.
They should not be able to
Ever hold office.
Ever hold office, any like high level positioning roles. Honestly, I don't even think that they really merit any of that, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. You literally did this to a massive community.
Yeah.
All together with no care in the world, just gaslighting them every day.
Yep.
Ugh.
This
This
is
is a
like-
whole different subject.
Okay,
now.
okay.
Because what happened is that I was looking into all of this, and then my freaking paranoia and
Yeah.
anxiety started kicking in.
So you started
And then
looking-
I'm like, is there anything that exists out there to
Yeah.
detect these
Yeah,
things?
there are.
To
There's
help you
tests and
out?
stuff like that.
Like, I know that there is, like, you know, the Brita filters and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like for things like lead, you
Yeah.
know, and whatever, is there something that can be done? Like, you know,
Yeah.
so that's what this is.
Yeah, so there's like certain type of like household water filters that are really effective at both removing lead and some of the other type of harmful bacteria. But it's also important to use the right type of filter to ensure that it meets the specific certification standards. So here's a little bit of the breakdowns of what you can use to
For either bacterial
or lead, or just feel a little bit more safer when it comes to the things that you're ingesting.
Yeah.
So one, activated carbon filters with certification. Okay.
Because many of them, like, you could just go on Amazon and it's
buy it, but it's not certified.
Yeah.
So it's really effective for lead. So the activated carbon filters are commonly used in household water filters, like pitcher filters and faucet mounted filters. They can effectively reduce the lead and are certified by the NSF and ANSI. Standard 53, which just means that they're specifically tested for lead removal. Okay. Also for bacteria, the carbon filters alone do not remove bacteria or other microorganisms. However, the filters combine activated carbon with additional filtration technologies to address those contaminants. Now, also, there's filters that use reverse osmosis. That's a complicated thing that I'm not going to spend time explaining.
yeah, we're not.
But so for lead, the reverse osmosis systems are highly effective at removing lead, as they use like a membrane that's semi-permeable. So think about it like it just has like little tiny little holes to like act that you can go from side to side. A membrane that blocks particles, including metals, from passing through, right? So it's like literally a filter.
Yeah, exactly. But
then-
these holes are like the design,
Very tight.
and it's supposed to be like it's small enough to like be able to filter out like
Yeah.
these contaminants like lead.
Yeah. And they use science,
Yeah.
the reverse osmosis to do it. And then for bacteria, reverse osmosis systems are also effective against some bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens. It doesn't guarantee the removal of all the microbial contaminants unless combined with additional disinfection, such as UV treatment. But honestly, I can't even imagine. Like,
lot.
filter the water, shine some UV light on it. Jesus Christ, I think I'm just going to buy mineral water for the rest of my life.
Right. Well, this is like a whole big system. Like a
Yeah.
reverse osmosis is like a whole big like thing, you know.
Yeah. Now talking about the UV systems, the UV system doesn't really filter out lead, as UV light only targets biological contaminants and does not remove dissolved metals or other inorganic chemicals. UV systems are also excellent at inactivating bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens in water by exposing them to the UV light, which damages their DNA and then renders them pretty much harmless.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of gross though to think about. You're just
Yeah.
the DNA is dead, but you're still ingesting the dead stuff. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So the UV systems are often used in conjunction with carbon and reverse osmosis filters for like a comprehensive filtration.
Right, because it pretty much only tackles the biologics.
Yeah.
So then you need the other for the actual like material.
Yeah. This next one I've heard about, the ceramic filters with the silver in it.
Yeah.
Basic ceramic filters are not typically effective for lead removal, but some advanced ceramic filters are enhanced with activated carbon or other materials to remove the lead. And then the ceramic filters are good at trapping bacteria due to their tiny pore size, especially if they're impregnated with silver, which has antimicrobial properties that can reduce bacterial growth within the filter itself.
Yeah.
And then obviously just combining like combination filters, right?
Like I said, like the reverse osmosis.
Exactly.
and
Just
then,
like filters that have like multiple stages, right?
Yeah.
Some systems combine all of these that we just talked about to tackle a broader range of contaminants. So this combination system can effectively remove both lead and bacteria.
Yeah.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Pretty much.
And then the certification to look for. Filters are certified under NSF, ANSI, Standard 53 for lead removal, and NSF, ANSI Standard 55 for UV microbial reduction. And then you might also want to look for NSF, ANSI Standard 42 for aesthetic effects, taste, odor, chlorine reduction. And then Standard 58 for reverse osmosis systems, which covers lead removal. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what are the like, since that is like pretty much
Yeah.
the science behind
Exactly.
these
They're like,
filters?
just don't tell me what to look for. Just tell me what to buy.
Exactly. If that's what you're looking for, this is it. So, like for instance, Brita, right? I had literally just mentioned it. It's pretty much one of the most popular
One of
ones
the most
out
popular,
there.
yeah.
So the Brita faucet filters with NSF 53 certification can reduce lead, but do not address bacteria. Okay, so that's what you would be buying in that point. Then there's a Berkeley filters with ceramic elements, which use a combination of carbon and ceramic and are popular for reducing heavy metals, though effectiveness for bacteria varies per model. So you would have to like check which one and what you really care for, really. And then there's another one called Aquasana Reverse Osmosis plus Clarium, I think. Clarium. Yeah. This reverse osmosis combines carbon and reverse osmosis with optimal UV stages for bacteria, making it effective for both lead and microbes. So it covers everything pretty much. Now, you do need to remember, yeah, it's great. Go out and buy it, use it, whatever, but they do require maintenance. You can't just like put it and forget it, you know?
Yeah.
All filters need regular maintenance and replacement to remain effective. Bacterial contamination can build up in the filter itself if not maintained. So you're like doing nothing at that point. You also have to pre-treat it. If bacteria is a significant concern and that's why you're getting this, look for filters with a pre-treatment stage such as UV to ensure microorganisms are handled before water reaches the main filter stages. And when selecting a filter, always check for that NSF/ANSI certifications for lead and microbial reduction, and consider filters that just combine multiple technologies, right? So you could like she said, kill two birds with one stone, you know? So I wanted to highlight the doctor that pretty much spearheaded this and brought
She
this
deserves
out
her
to-
own section.
She really does, and that's why I wanted you to read it. She pretty much spearheaded the what is it, like the attention,
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was
Brought
part
it
of
to
a
life.
pivotal
She brought it to
movement,
life.
and she brought it to life. And
Yeah.
a lot of our current recommendations and guidelines came from her discovery in her reports. So you're the real MVP.
absolutely.
Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha played a pivotal role in exposing and addressing Flint water crisis, bringing scientific rigor. Okay.
So like strength.
All right. Yes. I'm bad at pronunciation.
What?
So
No, you're the one saving my
Like-
most of the time.
yeah, just there's some words and I'm like, okay. So Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha played a pivotal role in exposing and addressing the Flint water crisis, bringing scientific rigor, public health advocacy, and compassion to her work as a pediatrician. Woo woo,
Yep.
and director of the pediatric residency program at Hurley Medical Center in Flint, Michigan. Dr. Hanna-Attisha was in a unique position to observe the health effects of water crisis on Flint's children and to take action when she saw evidence of harm. So we'll talk a little bit of her like earlier observations and her concerns, her growth concerns. Dr. Hanna, I'm just going to say Dr. Hanna or Dr. Mona. I'm going to say Dr. Mona. Dr. Mona began to suspect something that was wrong when she heard about the high levels of Flint's water supply. She was aware of the harmful effects of lead exposure in children, especially in a community like Flint, where many families already faced the socioeconomic hardships. Lead exposure is particularly dangerous to children as it can cause, like we had already explained, developmental delays, cognitive impairments, behavioral issues. Even low levels of lead exposure have no known safe limit and can affect the brain and the nervous system. Now we'll talk a little bit about her research. In September 2015, Dr. Mona reviewed data from her hospital and other sources to investigate the potential impact of lead exposure on Flint's children. Working quickly, she analyzed blood lead levels in children before and after the water was switched in 2014. Her research confirmed a significant spike in elevated blood lead levels after the switch to Flint River water, particularly in children under the age of 5. Her data showed that the percentage of children with elevated lead levels nearly doubled and some areas of Flint tripled. Okay. Dr. Mona faced pressure from officials who disputed her findings, but she was determined to get the information out to the public to protect Flint's children. Knowing that time was critical, she held a press conference to present her findings to the community, the media, and the public. So I'm so like, it is so hard and scary, right? To have officials, right? Like government officials just like disregard you and coming out like to the public. I can't imagine, like, even when we started our podcast, it was like, man, like I'm putting myself out there, you know, and she put herself out there
completely
for her community, you know, so
she did what they didn't.
She did what they did not, right? And they kept on disregarding her findings because they probably knew that it was real. And they didn't want people thinking that.
You know what it is to disregard?
Because it's impossible. It's impossible
actual
that
science, like proof.
It's impossible that a community pediatrician, okay, is presenting you with all her data, comparisons before and after, okay, and you're gonna tell me that no health official took a look at it?
Like it's black and white.
Yeah,
it's
evidence. Sorry,
like
someone there turned the other way, turned a cheek. Gave her the frozen shoulder because they were protecting other people.
It has to be, because how could you deny something that is black and white?
But you know what?
Evidence.
She protected her community, and she was like, I'm going to let everyone know about my research, and everyone can do with that information what they want to do.
If the officials are not going to do it, then I'm going to do it.
I am. Yeah. The press conference was a turning point in Flint's water crisis. Dr. Mona's presentation of clear scientific evidence garnered significant media attention, putting pressure on local and state officials to take action. Her willingness to speak out and present her findings publicly challenged officials' narratives that had previously insisted that the water was safe. Her research provided concrete evidence that the lead levels were not just at a theoretical risk, but proven public health emergency affecting thousands of Flint's children. And she's just a pediatrician. I can see how she was just focusing on children because that's her specialty.
Right. And that's what she like looked at the
exactly.
results,
But I'm positive that triggered a lot of adult doctors to look at other things in all their other patients.
Right.
Now, confronting the officials, because I think this is the hardest part, and overcoming pushback. So initially, Dr. Mona faced resistance and criticism from the state and local officials. They questioned her research methods, data accuracy, and the implication of her findings. However, she had meticulously reviewed her data and continued to advocate for Flint's children, bolstered by support from other medical professionals and public health experts who validated her findings. Her advocacy eventually forced officials to acknowledge the crisis and prompted them to switch Flint's water source back to the Detroit system. So, advocacy, testimony, and long-term impact. Dr. Mona didn't stop at uncovering the crisis. She became a passionate advocate for Flint's children and families. She testified before Congress about the health impacts of Flint water crisis, calling for stronger regulations to protect the public health. Her testimony helped secure federal funding for Flint's water system improvements and to support long-term health care for the affected residents. In addition to her advocacy, Dr. Mona co-founded, I can't breathe. I have allergies.
She has allergies and I'm recovering from a cold. We're doing great, guys.
Yeah. So in addition to her advocacy, Dr. Mona co-founded the Flint's Kids Fund And it's basically a grant program that provides resources for long-term health and development of the children that were exposed to lead. This fund supports early childhood education, developmental programs, nutrition initiatives, and also other services that are aimed to mitigate the impact of the lead exposure. Dr. Mona went on to write a memoir. It's called What the Eyes Don't See, A Story of Crisis Resistance and Hope in an American City. And basically, this just details her journey of uncovering the Flint water crisis and the challenges that she faced. The book brings a lot of attention, not only to the water crisis, but also issues like environmental injustices, systemic inequality, and also the role of science in advocacy. Yeah, which is really, really tough. She was not, she didn't have any law training. She didn't have any of that. You know, she was basically this lady that went to medical school, became a residency medical program director, a pediatrician, and she found all these things, and she went and she fought and she held conferences and she continued, and then she continues to advocate, which is incredible.
Yep.
Dr. Mona's work in Flint has become a powerful example on how science and advocacy can intersect to create change. Her actions have inspired other healthcare professionals to speak out when they see injustices and to use data and evidence to drive public health interventions. She's widely recognized as a leader in public health advocacy and continues to work towards ensuring safe water and better health outcomes for all communities. So the biggest thing, which is amazing from everything that happened, I had just mentioned it a little bit before, that a lot of our recommendations comes from this situation. So there was policy changes. Flint's crisis accelerated policy updates across the country, not just there. The EPA strengthened its lead and copper rule, requiring utilities to test more rigorously for lead and to notify residents when water exceeds safe lead levels. This tragedy also sparked greater investment in water infrastructure, aiming to prevent similar crises elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
which that's how it should be.
Exactly.
It's really sad that it took this. You know, what sometimes I think about what happens if she didn't do that.
Exactly. No, they would have kept on going until 3 years later that pipeline, I mean, that infrastructure.
Until the damage would have been so immense that they could not ignore it anymore.
For 3 years. It would have been 3 years of them just dealing with super contaminated waters in so many different levels. Mm-hmm. Horrible.
So and shout out to Dr. Mona.
Oh, absolutely. Like, she is the hero. At the end of the day.
She's very well recognized. I mean, even like for me, like in residency, we had to learn about Dr. Mona and Flint, Michigan, and all of that, because it's really just it not only addresses like medical things and in peds and all of that stuff. It really helped us understand the importance of advocacy as well.
Yep. And then also, if you suspect something, you know, because it must have been like she's probably was seeing kind of like a pattern, you know, and then she's like, it must have been thinking like, why are all these patients having all of this? Like, what has triggered this? She's a scientist at the end of the day. Doctors are scientists. So it's like, she must have been looking for like, where is this coming from? You know, and then she brilliantly discovered that it was the water, something so innocuous, because that's the thing, something that's so widespread that everybody just needs, that it's in like water is kind of one of the last things that you would be thinking of, because it's just like, it's just water, you know. Anyway, but yeah, that was Flint, Michigan, guys. Hope you guys learned something new. I definitely did. I didn't even know about the Legionnaires like situation about it. I only really knew about the lead. But then of course that just makes sense. It just became a breeding ground for all of that too. You know, horrible. So yeah, that was today's episode. Thank you guys so much. You guys are obviously, like we always say, the MVPs. I keep hitting the camera today. But anyways, we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.